We have a lead presenter in the house. We have a presenter online. And I will just call the panel out. So we take the two presentations, and then we discuss the two presentations together. That is where we're going to do it. So first of all, join me to welcome our friend, distinguished economist, very renowned, Dr. Biodun Adedipe. Biodun Adedipe, Chief Consultant and Founder, B. Adedipe and Associates. Please, let's encourage him. He has been waiting all day. Thank you very much, sir. Please, you can take your seat. And we have a presenter online, which I will bring in. So Dr. Adedipe will have his presentation. We'll bring in Keshia Rust for her presentation. Now, the other panelists who will join us for this, we have Douglas Elisha, representing Mohammed Sani Abdullahi, Deputy Governor, Economic Policy, CBN. Douglas, where are you? Douglas, please come. We have Mr. Taufik Latinwo, representing Kehinde Ogundimu, MDCO, Nigeria Mortgage Finance Company. Taufik, please come to the podium. We have Mr. Audu Olokpo, representing the CEO, National Bureau of Statistics. Mr. Audu Olokpo, please come to the podium. Thank you very much. Mr. Emeka Ele, former President NAIS. We have Mrs. Evelyn Olanipekun, former Director Housing Census, NPC, Nigerian Population Commission. We have the DG, National Population Commission, Ojogun Telsin Osifo. We're pleased to have you join the panel. And we have Mr. Collins Alabi, Director of Lands, Federal Minister of Housing and Urban Development. Collins, where are you? Mr. Collins Alabi, is he here? Fantastic. He probably will join us. Okay, thank you. I mean, this session, these two sessions that we're looking at is very critical, very, very significant. Number one, we're talking about financing the housing that we need. You know, and Dr. Adedipe will be taking his keynote to speak to sizing the pot, you know, and it will take it from the angle of the macro perspectives, and it will cascade this into the industry and all the issues in that respect. And then, since yesterday we've been talking about data, so we're going to talk about the critical question. What does data tell us? Because a lot of the time, like we've had over and over, we simply groove in the dark. What is the size of this market? What is the size of various demographics? What is the size of the deficit in the various states? What is the size of the deficit for the various level of various age groups in the economy? These are the critical questions that we need to answer today. Data is critical. In the past, Redan took a very bold step to start the process of creating a data dashboard that we all can look at. There are a lot of initiatives in the market, you know, but I believe that we need to begin to synthesize all our views, advise government, work with. I remember that 2 years ago at this event, we had everybody from NPC, from Redan, from CBN in the same panel. This is a continuation of that. So I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Biodun Adedipe. He will make his presentation.
And I put together a deck of slides, and incidentally, having been here since the event started today, I've heard quite a lot of things that also crossed what I had penned down. But most importantly was what came from the last session. And that's a very strong message that I believe we should not lose sight of. That the success of what we do with housing in Nigeria and in Africa depends largely on collaboration. And that means it is not an issue for any particular segment of the market, or let me call it the sector. So what I'm going to speak to very quickly, I was told I have 15 minutes, but I can do that in less than 15 minutes. are just 4 things. The first, what I called what things look like right now, and my perspective is not just Nigeria but Africa in context of the name of this particular show. Then I will look also very quickly, maybe only one slide, at the nexus between housing and the economy. Then the core conversation, financing the housing that we need. In which case for me, first is to answer the question, what type of housing do we need? And then we now connect to financing. So as a starting point, what I said, what things look like currently. And I've heard some speakers also make reference to that. The major challenges that we have to grapple with in housing in Africa can be categorized into 7. The first is theirs of accessible long-term financing. Before we've been talking about lack of long-term financing, it is not so much as the financing not being available, but access to it. And that is the note on which I will end my presentation. Secondly, tenuous property titling. In which case, if people don't have titles to their real estate assets, we call them dead assets because it of little or no significant commercial value. So you therefore cannot tease value or sweat that particular asset. Thirdly, weak or non-existent institutions. And this is not peculiar to Nigeria, looking across the entire Africa. And of course, high housing construction costs that we have talked about, poor infrastructure, then low access to mortgage, which in fact plays an interesting picture when you look at the data across Africa, where Nigeria places, and then you interplay the ratio of mortgage financing to GDP, and then you talk about also the cost, the latest available data in terms of cost of constructing a housing unit. Lastly there, weak, non-existent, or unenforceable foreclosure laws. And I will say a little about that in a later section. So now, talking about relationship between housing and economy. Now, the connection between housing and economic growth and development is exemplified in a statement I came across in the publication of the African Development Bank, published in January 2023. And it says, investment in housing creates an important and strategic opportunity to change the narrative and drive growth domestically in Africa and also from within. That means it's not a matter of looking outside of Africa for funding or the ideas, but they are all in here, but they are not connected. A good number of the ideas are in silos. And I'll give an illustration. Now there's a project, I won't say it failed, but it is yet to be delivered. But now that project is situated in Nigeria, although relating to logistics, funding sourced from UK and US, and then the risk involved in that insured in South Africa, and the project is somewhere here in Nigeria. So, but the question is, if funding comes from extra Africa, so to say, and insurance is in Africa, and the project itself is in Nigeria, that means there is a possibility that ultimately the project might not see the light of the day because it is beyond Africa. They don't have a full understanding of the peculiarities of our market. Now, the strategic place of real estate, housing in particular, in an economy should ordinarily make government functionaries to seek always to remove the obstacles to housing development. Let me say a few things here. Our chairman made reference to data earlier on, and I'm sure we still have cause to deal with that. But when you look at data relating to Africa, number one, Africa is the second most populated continent in the world, and that is after Asia. But there's a peculiarity to the population of Africa. In the last 5.5 years, between 2018 and June 2024, that population has grown by about 500 million. That's one. Now, the World Bank says it is actually growing at the rate of 100 million annually. But that is not the real issue here. In the last 6 to 7 years, the dynamics of population in Africa has responded to climate change and security challenges, where there's now intensified rural-urban migration. That again is estimated at between 70 and 110 million people annually living where they are for urban areas. Now, what does that result into? Yes, generally, we say that will intensify the demand for housing in urban areas, but that is not the real issue for me. The real issue is that people move to the urban areas and they end up in slums, okay? And then at some point they begin to consider what life was like where they came from. And then the condition under which they live right now. And so there is a kind of discontent. And then there's what I call anger in the soul that makes them look for any little opportunity to vent that anger, in the urban areas where they are. And so the pattern of protest we see also, we cannot completely dissociate from this factor of a new lifestyle in the urban areas that a good number of them now see as far, far below what they envisaged when they migrated. Now, that is on one side. Now, let me also now bring us to this. What type of housing should we even be talking about? Because when we talk about financing the housing we need, we should also attempt to define the attributes of the kind of housing we actually need. And I have only 4 elements here. The first one, of course, we all know that's the essence of this show. We need affordable housing. That is very clear. In which case, the focus is on the bottom of the pyramid of the population. Secondly, and this is where I also bring the idea that had been mentioned earlier, those housing units should be locally adapted. And when I say locally adapted, it starts from the material that we use. In which case, how much of locally available materials can we adapt to fit into delivery of affordable housing? Thirdly, those houses must be smart. Smart in the sense, for example, that the designs can be such that allows maximum inflow of sunlight, that will therefore reduce the energy need in those houses. Because we know the challenge of energy all through Africa. Number 4 is what I call sustainable. In which case, it is affordable, yes, but it must also be sustainable going forward. Now, using the model recommended by African Development Bank, it says housing finance rests on a tripod. The first leg of the tripod is investment capital. The second leg is construction capital. And then the third leg is end user finance. We've had discussions variously crossing each of these legs. But from my own perspective, interventions will include things like AFDB mentioned, guarantees. We've talked about guarantees earlier on. Also, insurance. Then, of course, subsidies, etc. Now, these are the drivers that will enable us to deliver affordable housing. Now, coming to the issue of the intersection between GDP and the cost of housing and mortgage financing. 2 things I want to bring out to the audience. The first relates to what I described here as top 10 countries in Africa, when you consider the ratio of mortgage loans to GDP. Top 10. And they are as follows. We have Cabo Verde, and that's the number 1, top of the chart. Surprisingly, small economy, small population, but top of the log. Then follows Namibia, then South Africa, and of course we have Tunisia, we have Mauritius, we have Botswana, we have Zambia, we have Sudan, and then of course Djibouti and Seychelles. Top 10. But what you find there is that the story differs across those geographies. And you can go on and on and on. Now, Nigeria, with the largest population in Africa, estimated as at last month, June 2024, 229.1 million people. Estimated population. Now, if you look at that, the position of Nigeria population-wise, vis-a-vis Africa, and Nigeria is not part of the top 10, That means there is something radical we need to do about mortgage financing in Nigeria. Now, the second issue there is what I call, in terms of US dollars, top 10 countries in Africa. You see there, South Africa, Tunisia, Morocco, Namibia, Nigeria in there in terms of volume. But it's when you relate the volume to our GDP, we fall out of the top 10. So that is a strong case for us to strengthen mortgage financing in Nigeria. Now let me go on to the aspect of, that's my final take here. I call it forward thinking and forward looking. What should take our attention? Now, happening in different spheres across Africa, there's no geography that is left out. But what I discovered is this, that the practice with respect to housing delivery in Africa varies across the different countries. So there is a lesson to take from one geography to another. But there's something that came out for me. I think that happens in only one country in Africa. And that's the fact that ownership of the land is legally recognized as different and separate from ownership of the property on the land. Quite unlike the legal position in Nigeria, where the land in Nigeria confers legal rights and ownership for anything that is on the land. Okay? So in which case, if there arises a dispute and you reduce the dispute to judgment, eventually the owner of the land will win the case. That's what it means for us in Nigeria. But there's a country that says we are separating between those two. You can actually own the land and somebody else owns the property on it. In which case, there's nothing like dispute. So you work out an agreement that allows you and the other party to have your rights and also responsibilities, let me put it that way, on the land as well as on the property on top of the land. That is a pointer to an area we may need to interrogate in Nigeria. Now, the final part, and I call this innovations. Now, innovations in housing is not all about technology. There are several aspects and several areas we can look at. Green building materials, interestingly, in the report, the Housing Finance in Africa Yearbook 2023, incidentally, do I call her the editor or the, moderator, is the one also speaking to us at this show, okay? But there are some countries that already show evidence of this happening, like Chad, Cameroon, Algeria, Malawi, South Sudan, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Then Blue Finance, and that is Cabo Verde, which incidentally, I said earlier on, has the highest mortgage loans to GDP ratio in Africa. And then Green City, Smart City, Nigeria shows up there. Okay, that's where we have Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Egypt, Gabon, Gambia, Mauritius, Nigeria, and Zambia. Then Green Design, which of course I made reference to earlier on, that allows a lot of sunlight. Because we have that so plenty in Nigeria. In fact, in Africa, the joke I always make when I go to Europe, whether mainland or island, is that I love going back to Nigeria because in Nigeria, the weather we enjoy is summer all year round. Whereas in Europe, there are 4 seasons. Okay? Now, we can therefore also begin to look at green design, like has happened already in Mali, Morocco, Ghana, Kenya, Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Eswatini. Then energy efficiency, Nigeria showed up there. In fact, Nigeria and Burkina Faso are examples in the area of energy efficiency. Finally, technology in construction. And the examples given are Mauritania and Togo. So let me close with this. Now, I call this keeping the focus. And my summary there is that there must be a renewed government collaboration with private participants. Now, let's use the word participants rather than say developers. That is looking at the entire housing delivery value chain. So there must be collaboration. And number one, and this is my own strong opinion, that the government should provide the basic infrastructure. Now, this is something we normally say at the Nigeria Economic Summit Group. That if you want any area to be developed, you build the road to the location. Developers will go to build it. So that's a common thing we say. Of course, relevant institutions should also be established and peopled with the right professionals. But we see a number of government institutions, not just in Nigeria, across Africa, that are not peopled by the relevant professionals. So that also is an important thing I want to emphasize here. Then there is need for subsidies and interventions. Then when it comes to technology, and I'm happy the president of EMBA said earlier on, the place of artificial intelligence. But even more importantly is generative artificial intelligence. Now AI will do only one thing for you, and I will give a simple illustration. If you follow AI and you go on Google Maps, just to illustrate, you are traveling on a road and there are several vehicles parked by the roadside. Now, the satellite image to Google Maps will tell you that there is traffic jam along that route. It will paint the road red. Now, where it becomes generative artificial intelligence is that that road is red on the map, but you now drive through it without stopping and without reducing speed. That message goes back to the software. And then that says, given the experience of a motorist that passed that road, disregard the satellite image of all the vehicles parked by the roadside. So the color will change immediately from red to blue or green, as the case may be. Now, that is the place of generative artificial intelligence. So in which case also, what role can that play in the evolving practice across the entire value chain? I call it adaptive and innovative technologies. And also, how do we use more of local materials? Ecosystem integration, which says finance is not enough. I again pick this from the yearbook of CAHR. That finance is not enough to glue together all those joints. In which case, efficiency must run through all of them, and at the same time, the place of technology to drive that process in terms of cost reduction and, of course, housing delivery. So that means designers, developers, input producers and suppliers, financiers, underwriters, and of course, off-takers and sellers. Then I call them techies, because there is property tech, there's fintech, there's insurtech, there's pension tech, and so on and so forth. So across different, professional bodies that are involved. Finally, we must keep our focus on democratizing housing. And what do I mean by that? That means housing must be available, housing must be accessible, housing must be affordable. Once we can tick those three boxes, then we say housing has been democratized. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you, sirs.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
What I'd really like to talk about today is some work that we've been doing together with a number of you, actually. Primarily, our relationship is with the Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company. And of course, NMRC is also a member of the African Union for Housing Finance. And Kehinde Ogundimu, who's the CEO of NMRC, is also the chairperson of the AUHF. So we've got a really nice partnership between CAF and the AUHF and NMRC in terms of doing the work together that we're doing in Nigeria. So this is a project that that CAF has been working on for very many years, and we've been working on it across the continent, but we've received very special attention in Nigeria. And so we go where there's attention. And we've been very excited to work with partners, and I'll talk to that throughout the course of this presentation. We've been very excited to work with partners in Nigeria to really try and understand the housing market. Our mission as an organization, CAF's mission as an organization, is to that the way you do that is you have to convince the investor it's worthwhile. And the way you do that is with information. And they need information so that they can understand what the opportunity is, and also so that they can understand the risk, and they can then manage that risk. So what we've been doing as CAF is trying to pull together the data, the numbers that people can use in different contexts. But then on the other side, under the orange pillar there, we're also trying to explore meaning and understanding so that we can actually understand the significance of particular numbers as we identify them and define them. And that's our overall approach broadly, working with the public sector, with the private sector, working in countries, and working with respect to specific topics. In Nigeria, the work that we've been doing has been in that same framework. And just to share it quickly with you, and I'm sure that Barfestis will share this so that people can go and access the information on our website. But we've been working with NMRC in particular in building the data landscape for affordable aging with the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, the National Population Commission, and so on.
I'm going to dive straight into this by inviting Mr. Emeka Ele to give us his own perspectives. Emeka is a partner in Obosi & Co., and they issue one of the most detailed real estate reports in Nigeria with a lot of data. So I'm sure that he has strong issues to share on this. Over to you, Emeka.
Thank you very much, Hakeem, and good afternoon, everyone. As we've heard earlier today, the issue of data is critical to achieving housing adequacy. But we know that most of the data being bandied about are all estimates. In fact, today when the minister was speaking during the opening ceremony, I recall he talked about 540,000 houses being required to meet our housing need. But earlier, someone who spoke earlier on quoted a UN report, UN Habitat, that said 700,000 units. Same day with the minister available, you could see the divergence. If you look at the issue of the housing deficit, it ranges from 17 million to 22 million, depending on who you're talking to. In fact, some people actually believe that no deficit exists. A minister actually said he didn't know where deficits were coming from. So we have an issue of data, and the challenge is how do we deal with it? The problem is that the government, through their census or MBS, have not done enough to provide the accurate data for people to use. But I must say that professional bodies have also failed in that area, even though it costs a lot of money, and therefore you really can't blame the private sector. But so much can be done for us to get the right data. As a company, my own firm, Obosi & Co., we've gone out to source the data directly because we feel that data is important to the work we do. We do valuations for a lot of banks, and we feel that a major component of every valuation report is a sort of data. Once the data point is wrong, the report will be wrong. With regards to whether affordable housing or for the middle class or low-income earners, you equally require data with regards to where to invest. I listened to the family homes people talking earlier on, and I must commend them for what they're doing, because the challenges of Nigeria are such that, one, you don't have the data. Two, like somebody said, you can't even track where somebody lives. My name is Emeka Ele, but if you Google Emeka Ele, you will see so many Emeka Ele staring at you, not me. So we have challenges, and the issue of data can only be resolved through a holistic approach. My own approach to data, beyond the effort people like us are making to provide it, and beyond the effort professional bodies can make to address the issue, I think the government needs to get involved. I've always said that the key aspect of data collection must be dealt with by the government. And one area that can deal with that is the issue of regulation. If you regulate all sectors appropriately, it's easier to collect data. And I'll give an example. I play in the real estate sector. We are agents, we are advisors and all that. But with regard to real estate agency, which you may call brokerage, it's an all-commerce game. Everybody is in the same business. And therefore, it's difficult to regulate. It's difficult to control. Meanwhile, if you go to UK or any developed country, every agent is registered by the government. Every agent is under registration by the government. As low as plumbers, artisans, everybody is registered. Developers are registered, so you know who you're dealing with. So if 10 housing units are delivered annually, you will know. But here, it is difficult to, which is why I feel that central to the issue of data is regulation. If government, for instance, can regulate all agents that operate in the country under one umbrella, which is what happens everywhere. In the US, for instance, every state has a real estate board, and we regulate all agents that practice in that state. What it means is that through a multiple listing service, data from all sales and lettings can be accumulated and will serve as a resource for data. I mean, it's difficult that in this country, if you are asking for rental trends in Maitama, for instance, you may have to call 3-4 people to get the average figure. But that shouldn't be the case. If you go to London and you want to know the rate that house A sold for, if you go on the internet, you get the figure. And that is because it's a regulated area. And therefore, I feel that at the heart of that data is the issue of regulation. If we regulate all sectors, believe you me, it's easier to aggregate all the data, it's easier to control all participants, and be able to achieve a standardized data. I mean, my firm is provide data that we use for valuation reports. But it's not, you can't call it standardized data. The data should come from a standard source. If MBS, for instance, provides it, it becomes standardized. If my professional body provides it, it becomes standardized. And that's where we must be headed. So for me, at the heart of it is regulation. And that should pertain to all sectors of the real estate industry. If you look at developers, I mean, it is difficult to know how many housing units have been delivered annually. The figure in Lagos ranges from 19 to 25,000 units. But then who keeps it? Everything is estimate. If you want to say, look, how many houses do we need? A lot is estimates based on what you've heard this morning, between 540,000 and 700,000 provided by the minister. So for me, regulation will play a key role in ensuring that we deal with the issue of data in this country, and I think we should deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hand together for him. Please, I'm going to ask our panelists, please, to keep your responses to 3 minutes. Please, I know you've waited for so long. And I'm just going to go straight to the DG of National Population Commission, Mr. Ojogun Telsin Osifo. Thank you.
So let me just go straight. As he said, data, data, data. Well, in National Population Commission, we have a level of data which you can now access. That data took into cognizance every building in every mapped locality, and almost all the localities were mapped, apart from 0.06%. We mapped the buildings, we took their geo codes, geo position, and their uses. So if you really want to do further analysis, it is available. We have used the word collaboration. Essentially, maybe 2-3 days ago, we decided at the commission level that yes, we are going to put out that data before it becomes stale. So you have that aspect of it. I think I should just limit it there. Thank you.
So, I mean, that's very interesting. So how do we take this further? How do we further make it a lot more granular, available, and available to us to use? That's very important.
So this is step one. We have started it already. Yes. We are here. And I was made to understand that there was supposed to be a committee that will be inaugurated. So if I am in that committee or any other person is in that committee, the tendency is that data becomes more.
You are the chairman of the committee now.
So my chairman will be I'm a humble man. So anyhow, that is the situation that you find with respect to it. I know sometime last year, before the new government came, we went to meet Dr. Fashola as a department, and we told him all that we had. Now, it is an opportunity also to meet the Minister for Housing and Urban Development and let him know the content that is available. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate that. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Audu Olokpo, representing the CEO, National Bureau of Statistics, for his intervention. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's been very interesting listening to everybody here today, and of course, the numbers that have been bandied around today in terms of housing statistics. And as we all know, and as Mr. Ele had said earlier, you know, the numbers that we have are all estimates, and the paucity of data is evident in the confusion that we have in the housing sector. Yes, housing is very, very important because it contributes Real estate contributes about 5.2% to our current GDP as last measured in the first quarter of this year. And housing, as the case may be, is something that it's desirable by all. And if well developed, like in the US, for instance, housing numbers are one of the most important numbers that are released. And it shows the life of the economy. Is the economy doing well or not doing well? People know from the housing statistics.
Visit Housing TV Africa on YouTube and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to Housing TV Africa to stay updated on latest happenings in Nigeria's housing sector. Follow our social media pages, like and share our posts. On Facebook, Housing TV Africa. On Twitter, Housing TV Africa. Instagram, Housing TV Africa.